The showdown that Trump ignited is now boiling over. Lisa Cook still clings to her office days after being fired. Jerome Powell defies Trump's direct order, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent just blasted Cook on live TV, pointing out she won't even deny the mortgage fraud allegations. She just insists that Trump has no authority. Well, that defiance exposed the real crisis. Who runs America's money? Voters through their president, or unelected bankers hiding behind the myth of independence? Now, Trump's move forces the binary. Either the chief executive commands the executive branch as the Constitution demands, or the Fed itself is unconstitutional. There is no middle ground. The century-old cartel of debt slavery is trembling, and the standoff is only escalating. So keep on watching. Now, the Fed's unconstitutional power grab is finally being exposed. Just like Chuck Norris took control of his health at 84, Trump's taking control of our monetary system. Speaking of Chuck Norris, have you ever wondered what happened to this legendary martial artist? I recently saw a video that he made. I was shocked. He's in his 80s, still kicking butt and staying active. What's even more shocking is he's stronger, can work out longer, even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. He did this by making one change. He says he still feels like he's in his 50s. His wife even started doing this one thing, and she's never felt better. Chuck made a special video, explains everything at chuckdefense.com/next. You'll find it linked in the description below. So let's check in with Scott Bessent excoriating Fed Governor Lisa Cook for refusing to let President Trump fire her after she committed mortgage fraud.
That this is putting undue pressure on the Fed, and there are people like President Trump and myself who think that if a Fed official committed mortgage fraud, that this should be examined, and that they shouldn't be serving as one of the nation's leading financial regulators. And what we haven't heard from Ms. Cook is we haven't heard her say, "I didn't do it." We haven't heard her say, "I didn't do it." She just keeps saying the president can't remove her. The other thing, too, that I have called in the recent past for an internal review of all the Fed's operations, and I've encouraged Chair Powell to do this on an internal basis before there is an external review. And this is the kind of thing that needs to be addressed, because the Fed is an unaccountable institution, and its relationship with the American people depends on a high level of trust. And incidents like this puncture that trust. So President Trump is trying to make sure that anyone who serves at this institution has the trust of the American people.
And if
shouldn't there be trust? Yeah. Trust in our institutions. Rand Paul said the Fed has been cloaked in secrecy for years, but his Federal Reserve Transparency Act, which he just announced at the beginning of August, would mandate a full audit of this powerful organization. As you know, his father, Ron Paul, one of my favorite politicians, I was just at his 90th birthday party, has been gunning for the Fed for his entire political career. Rand following in his footsteps. Listen to Rand right now.
The Federal Reserve wields massive influence over our economy, but operates in secrecy with minimal oversight from Congress. During the financial crisis, the Fed secretly loaned over $16 trillion to domestic and foreign banks. My Federal Reserve Transparency Act will mandate full audits to expose Federal Reserve's dealings, to reveal the secrets, to ensure accountability to the American people.
Rand Paul, everybody. Now, let's take a closer look at this thread that we just dropped earlier today. 51,000 hits on this, 593 shares, 2,000 hearts. Definitely making an impact. This is what they don't want you to hear. Trump's battle with the Fed has exposed a constitutional showdown that terrifies the swamp. Either he can fire Lisa Cook as chief executive, or the entire Federal Reserve stands revealed as unconstitutional. Let's dive in. Now, Trump holds Article 2 power. The Constitution makes him chief executive. If governors like Lisa Cook can defy the law, then who really runs America? Well, the answer is unelected bankers hiding behind the lie of independence. And Trump says no more. Article 2, my friends, he holds the power. Now, critics are going to scream illegal, but think if the president appoints officials, why shouldn't he remove them? The founders never intended a central bank cartel to hold more power than the White House. This fight is bigger than Cook. It is about sovereignty, the sovereignty of we the people. Now, the Federal Reserve was birthed in 1913 by backroom bankers at Jekyll Island, a place I've personally visited and had lunch with G. Edward Griffin in. No constitutional amendment, no approval by the people, just a debt machine unleashed on America, and Trump is ripping off the mask, showing the emperor has no clothes. Now, Lisa Cook is not the issue. She is the symptom. Inflation, manipulated interest rates, collapsing savings accounts. That's the Fed's legacy. And every time the people suffer, the bankers cash in. Trump's threat exposes the entire rotten edifice. So here's the binary that they fear. Option 1, Trump has power as chief executive. Cook is gone. Option 2, if they claim he doesn't, then the Fed itself is unconstitutional. Therefore, abolish it. There is no wiggle room. There is no hiding. And that is why they are sweating. Now, the Fed operates like a fourth branch of government, accountable to no voters, no oversight, no constitution. Presidents rise and fall. Congress bickers, but the Fed stays in power, and Trump just detonated the illusion of independence. Now, remember Andrew Jackson? He fought the central bank in the 1830s, calling it a hydra of corruption. Trump is channeling that same spirit now. The swamp cannot handle a president willing to confront their golden idol of endless debt. Yes, kill the bank. Now, mainstream media will frame this as Trump versus Lisa Cook. Wrong. It is Trump versus the globalist system. If he wins, the Fed's grip loosens. If he's blocked, their independence is revealed as unconstitutional tyranny. Either way, checkmate. Now, this is not just about America's money. It's about who rules America. A president chosen by the people or unelected bankers running monetary policy in secret. Trump's move forces that question into the light. The swamp is absolutely terrified. Trump wielding the power of we the people. Now, critics will cry, the markets will crash, but the truth, the crash already happened. Our wealth drained by inflation, our savings gutted. The Fed caused it. Trump daring to challenge them is the first step towards restoring accountability. People want accountability. Every single lawyer, every banker, every media mouthpiece is sweating like the meme guy at 2 buttons. Admit Trump has firing power or admit the Fed is unconstitutional. Either path leads to their defeat. That is the binary choice. The bankers sweating. This is history in motion. Trump versus the Fed, sovereignty versus slavery, Constitution versus the cartel. They can mock, they can sue, but they can't escape the truth. America is waking up. I love this picture right here. Donald Trump and the Fed. I think he has just found their Achilles heel. Now, Ross Gibbons writing, well put, all true. What happened with auditing Fort Knox? I certainly want to know. Here we have this. Its real empire isn't a flag, it's a ledger. The City of London cabal headquarters with the Bank of International Settlements, the ECB Frankfurt, the Federal Reserve, and the IMF World Bank. And that is with the City of London. They stayed here at the center. Now, going to bring the entire system down. It'll be interesting to see what happens. People don't see it, but what the Fed does doesn't matter perhaps more than what most presidents do. Let's see here. There was another picture. I mean, a lot of people comment. Okay, this is the picture I was looking for. This is the government of the United States, right? At the very top, you can see, let me see if I can zoom in better for you. The Constitution and the executive branch. Follow those solid black lines on this graph, and you will find that the Federal Reserve is underneath the executive branch. All right? It is directly through the executive branch. So this entire move, now, at first glance, I admit, I was just like, okay, he's firing a Fed governor. I didn't consider the significance until I started looking deeper into the topic. I said, wait a second. This is actually genius because no president has ever done this in 111 years. He's challenging the banking monopoly in this country. And this is the perfect method to do so. Now, check this out. This is what is really going to make people confused. Eric Darty posting this just 4 hours ago. The markets have gained ever since President Trump announced the firing of Democrat Fed Governor Lisa Cook. The exact opposite of what the experts said.
If he did not, everyone was saying last week that if Trump fired Lisa Cook, the stock market would crash and bond yields would go up. The exact opposite has happened. It's once again a repudiation of the expert class. President Trump is holding people accountable. In fact, if he did not hold Lisa Cook accountable, that would have posed a risk for markets because they would actually question the rule of law in America, and that's something that markets do not tolerate.
James Fishback, you are a tough guy. We'll see you again real soon. Thank you, Jay.
The markets reacting positively. Trump stated that the president of the Fed, Jerome Powell, would step down quickly, wait for the rate cuts. We're still waiting for Jerome Powell to step down. I don't think so. I think that we're going to see the rate cuts instead because that's what President Trump is demanding. Okay, so who is Lisa Cook? This is Lisa Cook, right there on your screen. The nonpartisan Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook said in 2020 that Donald Trump was definitely a fascist. She would commit mortgage fraud a year later. Watch.
And embraces that. We have seen this before. And that's why my European friends told me before Trump was elected not to make fun of what was happening, to take very seriously what was happening, because they've had recent skirmishes with fascism. They know the impact of fascism, and this guy is definitely a fascist and embraces that, and will sow divisions in this country that that will take a long time to mend. We have seen this.
Oh, yeah. They are nonpartisan over there at the Federal Reserve, they say. I guess her own mouth speaks differently. Here we have Lisa Cook still working for the Fed despite President Trump firing her on Monday. What is going on? Why is Jerome Powell defying a lawful order from the duly elected president of the United States? Jennifer-isms just broke news on Yahoo Finance.
Emails continuing.
Is she still a Fed governor, and what comes next?
That's right, Allie. Lisa Cook's lawyers expected to file a lawsuit today in D.C. federal court fighting the president's firing of her. In the meantime, in view of pending court action, the Fed has deferred a decision on her status. In other words, she still works for the Fed, likely has access to her emails, continuing to be able to work. Whether she actually goes into the Federal Reserve building or not is an open question. And of course, depending on how long this legal battle goes, the bigger question is what happens at the FOMC meeting on September 16th and 17th if we're still in this situation. But this legal battle potentially kicking off today.
Is she still a Fed governor?
She's still there, refusing to leave. This is going to be a massive standoff. Let's check in with the National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett talking about the Fed.
Hiking rate. No, I think what the president believes, and I think that there are a lot of observers that agree with him, is that this Fed hasn't really been independent. That if you look at their movements to let inflation get out of control, to potentially jack up the economy right ahead of the election for Kamala Harris, to begin hiking rates the minute President Trump was elected back or took office in 2017, there was a pretty troubling partisan pattern, and the partisan pattern is in the rhetoric too. So one of the things I think was most interesting about the Jackson Hole meeting with Jay Powell is that the Fed, all the way since January, has been saying, contrary to economic theory, that inflation was going to skyrocket because of tariffs and that they had to have high rates because of tariffs. And as the Council of Economic Advisors report that just came out shows, that in fact import prices have gone down during the tariff episode. And Jay Powell now admits that they were wrong about tariffs and inflation at the Jackson Hole meeting. And so I think that was a productive debate. But what they did is they stuck themselves into the middle of a partisan non-monetary policy discussion, and they were wrong about it.
Okay, so I just asked ChatGPT, how can Donald Trump end the Federal Reserve legally in light of Lisa Cook's firing? Give it to me straight narrative with no extra commentary. Let's hear what ChatGPT has to say. Oh, hang on. There we go.
Here's the straight narrative. The Federal Reserve was created by Congress in 1913 through the Federal Reserve Act. Because it is a statutory entity, not a constitutional one, it exists only as long as Congress allows it to exist. The President cannot unilaterally abolish the Federal Reserve, but he can influence its future through several legal avenues. First, the President can call on Congress to repeal or amend the Federal Reserve Act. With sufficient support in both chambers, Congress could pass legislation to restructure or even dissolve the Fed, and the President could sign that bill into law. Second, the President can exert executive authority over appointments. The Constitution makes the President responsible for nominating members of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, subject to Senate confirmation. By removing or replacing officials, as in the case of firing Lisa Cook, and nominating new members aligned with his vision, the President can shift the direction of the Fed's policy. Third, the President can use his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed by directing the Treasury and other executive agencies to prepare for alternative monetary frameworks if Congress moves to curtail or repeal the Federal Reserve Act. In short, to legally end the Federal Reserve, the President must work through Congress to repeal the law that created it, while simultaneously reshaping the board through his appointment power to align with that objective.
If you got value from this report, tap subscribe. My final thought is next. So this is Andrew Jackson versus the central bank all over again. Jackson called it a hydra of corruption and constitutional sword. The Fed operated for over a century as an unaccountable fourth branch of government, manipulating rates to help their friends and punish their enemies. Powell refusing to fire Cook after a lawful presidential order proves that they think they're above the law, but Trump's trap is genius. If he can't fire her, then the entire Federal Reserve Act is unconstitutional. No private banking cartel should control America's money supply. That power belongs to Congress and the elected president, not shadowy bankers meeting in secret. Rand Paul has been calling for an audit for years. And Trump's going further. He's exposing their entire fraudulent system. 4D chess on steroids. So here's the question. Should America return to the gold standard? End fiat currency manipulation forever? Drop your answer below. And while you're fired up, check out our Next News merch shop and show the world where you stand.